A lot happened between India and Nepal, more than we expected.
The worst I've ever seen.
Making international news.
More than 50 times over global permissible limits.
Choosing Nepal over India was what happened in the end, but the time leading up to this decision was full of twists and turns we didn't see coming.
Stress levels were getting quite high.
We didn't really have a plan B.
We're a family of 4 traveling around the world in Jane, our Grenadier, and up until recently we were living in our trailer tent. That was until the fire, which left it badly damaged, and to repair it we'd need to get to Mongolia.
It was critical that we got the Chinese visas. There's basically no other way to get to Mongolia.
So we're making our way through India, Nepal, and China to get there, and bring our trailer back to life.
We're thinking like we might not get these visas.
The guy messaged us, we met him the next day, and then basically handed over the keys and crossed our fingers.
Though the road ahead is anything but certain.
This is going to be a little bit different from our usual style of video because a lot happened in between India and Nepal, and we thought it would be better to sit down and talk about it.
We also had quite a few people give us comments saying they want to learn more about the nitty-gritty and what actually happens behind the scenes, so buckle up. I thought you'd like that one.
In the last video, we had crossed from Pakistan into India and there were no issues with that. It was pretty smooth.
Wow.
We are literally in the middle of Wagah border, which is between Pakistan and India, and they have something pretty unique where they do a daily parade at 4:30, and we are currently right in the middle of it.
Then we got to the border city in India and the air quality was horrendous. The pollution was the worst I've ever seen.
Making international news all over the world, so it's pretty significant, way off the charts. It was also in Pakistan as well. It was a huge, huge area, almost as far as Nepal actually.
More than 50 times over global permissible limits.
Air quality in India's capital, Delhi, has deteriorated to dangerous levels.
Residents in Pakistan and neighboring India are having trouble breathing.
If you step out of the house, your eyes start watering and burning, your throat has a burning sensation. You're trying to do shorter breaths because psychologically your body is telling you not to breathe this air.
Northern Indian states grapple with severe air pollution annually in the winter, due to a combination of crop stubble burning in agricultural states and cooler temperatures that trap the smoke, which then blows into cities and made worse from vehicle and industrial emissions.
So we thought, okay, let's continue heading east and see if it gets better. And it just never got better. So in the end, we just decided to go as fast as we could through India and get to Nepal. And unfortunately, we didn't get to see some of the places that we wanted to.
Yeah, we really did look hard across the whole of northern India, but just everything was saying that the air pollution was just so bad, it's kind of just pointless even going anywhere. Even right up in the mountains, you're just going to be sat in this like smog and it's just not enjoyable whatsoever. So yeah, unfortunately, route 1 to Nepal.
As you can imagine, I think it was around 5 to 7 days of just driving every day, all day. Everyone was exhausted. We crossed into Nepal and we stopped in a little village called Bardia.
As we entered Bardia, it was a reminder that, you know, not everything is as you might think stereotypically, i.e. Nepal, mountains, Himalayas. It's actually at sea level and we're in the middle of a jungle with wild animals everywhere. So it's a great place to we found a homestay and we just relaxed there for a few days and it was nice to just stop. But we'd actually booked flights to Southeast Asia, to Thailand. That's where we're going to chill for the winter. Most winters we just have a bit of a rest, just wind down, catch up on the videos, catch up on social media, just have some sort of stability and just let the kids get into a routine, and we didn't have that much long left, so we had to continue crossing Nepal at quite a rate. So one thing when you're leaving a country and you're planning to leave the car and trailer is that you have to think about, A, are you allowed to do that? And B, if so, what are the rules, what are the restrictions? So Nepal's great, it's 180 days, so 6 months you can leave it there. And you can freely come and go, which was a massive bonus. So we'd found a good place to keep it, but it was outside. It did have shelter, but it was outside. But just by pure chance, we passed a guy on the road in Lumbini, which is the birthplace of Buddha. And he messaged us a few hours later saying, look, I've got the Land Rover dealership here, I've got the Mercedes dealership, and I'm really keen on setting up the INEOS Grenadier dealership. And he knew all about the INEOS, and he was so excited there was one in Nepal. So he said, please come and see us. So we did. And he was so kind and said, look, if you're looking to store your vehicle, I've got a place you can store it underground. His name is Kishore. Absolute legend, very, very kind. And yeah, we ended up leaving the car there. It was a bit strange though. I mean, the guy messaged us, we met him the next day, and then basically handed over the keys and crossed our fingers.
Like, God, we hope that our car is still here when we come back to Nepal in a few months.
But he didn't just store it for us, he also just kept the battery on trickle charge on the car and trailer. And so that helped a lot in terms of when we're coming back. We don't have to jump in and deal with any sort of electrical gremlins that we might face. So thank you so much, Kishore, for that.
After that, we headed to Thailand. Beach holiday.
Yeah. And specifically in Thailand, we were focused on potty training day and night and swimming.
We were not about to try to do night potty training on the road because I just think it would have been really stressful.
It would have been emotional, guaranteed.
Yeah, it was already emotional in Thailand. I mean, we didn't sleep for a whole month.
Yeah.
So.
And as we were nearing the end of Thailand, we're starting to kind of set our sights on what's up next, which is obviously more time in potentially India, Nepal and China, and then get the trailer to Mongolia so we can fix it. So we started to do a bit more research. We knew we could get a Chinese visa in Nepal, but then I came across this YouTube video that basically said we'd driven around the whole world and then the whole trip finished in Nepal. So obviously I watched it, and what had happened is they'd been to Turkey and Pakistan previously, and that is a big problem from a Chinese perspective. And we realised, obviously, we've also been to Turkey and Pakistan.
For an extended period of time as well.
Yeah, which makes it even worse. And so as we dug deeper, we realised there's a really high rejection rate, like over 50%. And we're technically applying for 4 visas from 4 individuals. Sometimes you can do it as a family, but that's not guaranteed. And so with a 50% failure rate for 4 separate people, we thought, this is really not great.
We just couldn't take the risk of a 50% chance because that would mean potentially like we wouldn't be able to repair our trailer.
And the other thing is some of these stories said it took a month or 2 and then they took the passport for another 2 months. And so potentially we could have been in Nepal for 3 or 4 months just waiting and still get rejected. Because we lived in Hong Kong previously, we got permanent residency, and obviously it's effectively China. We decided to fly to Hong Kong. Yeah, it was critical that we got the Chinese visas. There's basically no other way to get to Mongolia. Technically, if you absolutely had to, I guess you could go through Russia, but that in itself, with all the problems to get visas as we experienced last time when we went to Kazakhstan and we split the family, and even that took weeks and weeks, and the cost, it just spirals. So this was, in our minds, the only option. And our best bet was to go to Hong Kong. And we never thought we'd be going to Hong Kong. And
yeah, it was all very last minute. We really lucked out again. I mean, we've got some good karma, don't we? Matt's one of Matt's really good friends, and he lives with his partner, and they happened to be traveling at the time, and so nobody was staying in their flat, and they offered to let us stay there while they were gone.
Thank you so much, Steph, if you're watching that. We really appreciate it. Taking a whole family in for a couple of weeks is massive. So
yeah, they don't have children, so it's not like it was a child-proof flat.
It's a very nice flat in a very nice area of Hong Kong. So we lived a very nice life for a couple of weeks.
Then, something that wasn't on our side, luck-wise, was The day that we applied for the Chinese visa, which we had to do once we got to Hong Kong, the Chinese embassy had decided that they were going to change to an entirely different system, and it was all going to be online, and it literally launched the day that we applied. So that caused all sorts of issues because they were trying to work out, there was a lot of kinks in the system. It wasn't working the way that it should, which is understandable when you launch a new system like that, but we just happened to be applying at the same time, which meant that it was extremely stressful and things were taking a lot longer than we thought they would. Matt was down at the embassy every single day.
I mean, it should have taken like 5 to 7 days. We built in another week of contingency just for, you know, what ifs or a few extra days delay. We paid for express and tried to expedite as fast as possible. So we did everything within our power. But I found in these situations, the best thing to do is just to make your presence known without being aggressive, and just become part of the furniture there so that every single person knows who you are, they know your story, and they know you're not going to go away until this gets resolved. And that tends to expedite things as quick as possible. But the problem is it was just really hard to get any sort of feedback. And what we'd established was we hadn't actually been processed as a family. So now it really was 4 independent applications. On the old system, you could just tick, is this as a family? And you just go as a group. But in this system, as it stood on day one, you've just got 4 random applications with all these huge Chinese tour groups in between the middle, and you know, we're just kind of fighting to get us all together and get us processed and get us accepted. But again, there was no guarantee at all because we still had the Turkish, we still had the Pakistan issue, and we weren't sure how they were going to deal with that.
There was a lady that also applied around the same time we did, and her daughter got approved, but she did not get approved for the visa, and she had just been to Turkey. So for the first time while we were there, we were thinking like we might not get these visas, and we didn't really have a plan B.
Well, Adrian and Steph were going to be coming back to their flat, so that was going to be almost a final cut-off. You know, we can't all live there, so that was the expiry. I mean, obviously, if we absolutely had to, we'd then have to move into other accommodation and just wait it out.
Okay, go. Why are we drinking this bottle of wine?
Because we have failed to get our Chinese visas. So we thought that we'd have a congratulatory glass.
Me, Jack, and Charlotte's visas came through, but not Matt's. We had absolutely no answers. So in the end, we decided that me and the kids would fly to Nepal because we couldn't change our flights, and Matt would just wait and see, you know, what was going to happen. Me and the kids, we hung out in Kathmandu, just kind of like biting our nails, hoping that you would get it.
One thing that went through our mind was, if we needed to get the car and trailer there, could Leah drive it with the kids? Or
on my own, and you would.
Yeah, and I would take the kids.
The kids would
ahead
fly
of time to Mongolia. None of these situations were ideal, and we were going through May time, and it would be really high altitudes, and so it's likely there'd be snow and ice and mud and all sorts of stuff.
With the trailer, which is, it's really tricky driving on ice.
But thankfully, the universe turned back in our favour, and they issued the visa. My background's ex-military, so now you're layering military Turkey and Pakistan, and so we're not kind of helping ourselves. No. But thankfully it all came through, booked a flight back to Kathmandu, and got in just before the tourist season started, and we were ready for acclimatization.
we kind of had toyed with the idea of going back to India so we could go to these mountain regions like Ladakh, and Sikkim is another area that we were considering.
And Assam. We were going to go to the far west and the far east.
Yeah. But visas became an issue again. While we were in Hong Kong, we did consider applying for the Indian visa, but it was just going to take way too long. There were no guarantees. A lot of people were getting denied visas for India at that time. We were just like, it's not worth it. And yeah, we're going to go back to Nepal. And then one thing we did consider was another way that we could get an Indian visa and be able to drive in and out is that we could fly to India and then fly back to Nepal, and then that would give us
It activates a multi-entry
yeah.
visa, and then you can use it on land borders. So it's actually a nice little shortcut to doing things. But the only downside was Kathmandu had a single runway, so all the slots were limited, so prices went through the roof, and they passed that on to passengers. And so again, to fly a family of 4 to India is not normally that bad, but at that time it was crazy money.
Yeah. The amount of driving that we would have to do in the time that we had, we just thought, it wouldn't be fair to the kids. And I think that was also a big...
That was probably the main thing.
That was like the final kind of nail in the coffin for not going to India, which we were both really disappointed about, but... our kids come first always. Some overlanders we know, like they'll drive, easily 10 hours or more in one day for multiple days to make up time, and we just can't do that with the kids.
It's not fair. It's not enjoyable really. And also, if you're doing it as part of a much longer trip like we are, it's almost like a endurance race. You really have to think about that, and stress levels were getting quite high. Yeah, so when we decided, okay, we're not going to India, instantly it made things so much lighter, much cheaper, and it just meant we'd already committed to a group to enter China, so that date was fixed. So ultimately it gave us, I think, 6 weeks in Nepal? Yeah, 6 weeks in Nepal, which is like a lot of time, which was nice because it meant we could just explore, acclimatize, and relax. Or so we thought.